Hi, this is another two-part video where I'm going to be talking about med kits for EDC or everyday carry, and then also more comprehensive med kits for more serious injuries and for when help isn't necessarily immediately available. Hi, this is Everyday Prepper and welcome to the channel. Now I'm going to go through a basic medical kit that you order online, or this particular one is from Boots Pharmacy. They're all pretty standard. I like my field hospital that I've set up for demonstration today. So before we get into this, I just want to make it clear that I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a qualified first aider, although I have been. So I have been trained in first aid before. And so any information that I give you today is purely my opinion. And I'd certainly recommend that you get some proper first aid training in how to use all the various equipment that I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm basically going to go through the equipment, talk about what's in med packs, what I think should be in med packs, what I use in med packs, and also for longer term. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of bits and pieces. Again, that's not from a qualified point of view. It's my opinion. It's also by following instructions that come with the items. So that's all the disclaimers out of the way. Let's get to it. So this one is a pack that I got from Boots. I don't think the original stuff is actually in here, but normally what comes with a pack is what I'm going to go through now. So we have a bandage, various plasters you'd normally get, assortment there, some weird and wonderful shapes of plasters, lots more plasters. Quite often you'd have some antiseptic wipes in there as well. Useless pair of scissors that can't even cut paper. These they always come as standard, absolutely rubbish, so always replace those with some decent scissors. You also get a useless pack of safety pins. I don't think I've ever had to use these apart from maybe hold some trousers up. Not really a medical emergency. These are some wound dressing pads. There you go. And then if you're lucky, you'll get a first aid instruction manual in here, which I've never read. Probably should do. So that's generally what you get in like a 90-piece kit, and then what you'd get is duplicates of all of that. So you get it all bulked out with lots of those sort of things. The other thing you'd also get is quite often in a hard plastic squeezy bottle, you'd have an eye flush kit to flush out foreign objects from your eyes, like sand or something like that if you're out down on the beach. This one is an irrigation solution, which those eye ones you can use for cuts, to flush out cuts, to just clean them up before you apply any dressings. So that's what you'd have in a basic kit. There are much more extensive kits that you can buy. Quite often you can just, you get what you pay for. The more you pay for a kit, the more stuff you're going to get in there. So on top of what comes in a very standard kit, I wanted to just run through what I think should also go in a standard medical kit that you take out. And when I say everyday carry, I mean if you're going camping, if you're going hiking, a day out on the beach, a picnic, day out on a boat somewhere, day out fishing. Fishing, I've always traditionally taken plasters and some antiseptic cream with me, because I'm always putting hooks in my fingers and catching myself on fish fins and things like that. So yeah, I would say most households would or should certainly have at least a reasonably comprehensive first aid kit and the knowledge of what to do and how to patch yourself up. But if you're not at home, this is what I'm talking about here. This is the kind of kit that you'd be taking away with you. So this is what I'd have in my car, and I have duplicates of these, in various bags that I take with me, rucksacks that I take out with me when I'm out and about. So apart from what's in this kit, I would also have, and I'm probably not going to get it all in here, so you quite often need a bigger pouch, but I would have personal items to me, so things that I would necessarily need. So I'm not particularly asthmatic, I've kind of grown out of it now, but I'd have a spare inhaler. I'll talk about that for a long term as well, and in maybe how to obtain these, because they are a prescription medication. But I'd have one of those in the pack. Spray plaster, really handy. I've used that on cycle trips when you graze your knee, or just brush yourself up against a brick wall and you have a little graze on there. You spray that over and it's like a glue. It just hardens over and stops the bleeding. Really handy. Antiseptic cream doesn't usually come with the standard pack, and so Savlon or I like Germaline. Obviously other antiseptic creams are available. I like this particular one because it has an anaesthetic in it as well, so it does cut the pain off, and it's very effective. Micropore tape, really handy for securing bandages and plasters if you've got a big area to cover. Now these items are not in particular order. Insect spray, depending on where you go, obviously camping is a must. Some ibuprofen gel, I would use that for any sprains or aches and pains, that kind of stuff. Now, some of the things that you might use in this, you might not need a hospital or a medical care centre. These are just things you can probably patch yourself up with without needing any expert help. But also, what you want to do is make sure that you've got some stuff that can patch you up before you get to that help. There might be some delay, especially if you're out and about. Anti-diarrhea tablets, self-explanatory, but those kick in within like 10 minutes. So if you're out and about, you need one of those quick. That'll stop things going a bit pear-shaped. I often take some antacids with me. Just because the last thing you want to do is, if you do suffer from a bit of acid indigestion, then you haven't got anything with you. It's pretty uncomfortable. So even if you're out in a theme park, for instance, and you're spending the whole day there, the last thing you want is to be uncomfortable. So these are comfort items as well. Steri strips probably should have gone in first. Very, very basic packs don't tend to have steri strips. So these are, or what are they called? Adhesive wound closure strips, and they work very, very well if you've got larger cuts that need closing up to stop the bleeding. Once you've cleaned it and dried it, you get these on there that'll hold the wound closed, and then you can put a plaster or a bandage over the top of it. So these are essential, I think, for a first aid kit. And if you pay a bit more, you'd normally have these in a first aid kit, but you want lots of those. More adhesive wound dressings for larger injuries. Rubber gloves. Some first aid kits again do have a set of rubber gloves in there, but really handy. Surgical gloves, I should say. These are kind of non-sterile ones really, but they're just handy, especially if there's lots of blood from an injury or something. Paracetamol and ibuprofen tablets. You never know when a headache's going to arise, or you've injured yourself and you need some more painkillers before you can get to better treatment. These ice packs, I bought a load of these, and I've got these in pretty much every pack that I've got some in the car, I've got some at home, I've got some in my camping gear, and they're really good. They've got like a gel bubble inside that you just squeeze really hard, and it puts a chemical amongst all these crystals that, you can hear that, but it mixes with the crystals, and it gets really, really cold. It's like having peas out of the fridge, and great for sprained ankles or other associated injuries. And you put these on there, and even for a really bad headache, these are very, very good. They last for a long time as well. They're only one use though. Aspirin. Now, again, this doesn't constitute medical advice, but I understand that if you come across somebody who's having a heart attack, giving them an aspirin used to be as part of first aid advice, but do double check that, and I'd always recommend going on a first aid course. First aid at work course that I went on a couple of times, it's really comprehensive. It's much better than a basic first aid course. Whatever you can afford. If you can get on a first aid at work course, they're really, really good. More sort of long-term treatment really, but Bonjela, you never know when a toothache's going to suddenly arise, or you might get a really nasty mouth ulcer. This stuff's great. Great for kids teething as well. Sachet of salt. Now, this won't come in any normal med packs. The reason I have this in there, you can use eye solution, but I use contact lenses from time to time. I got stuck one time when I had to check into a hotel, and overnight I wanted to take out my contact lenses, and normally I store them in the little storage containers, and you have some saline solution that goes in with it, but I didn't have any of that, so I had to make my own. So I literally got a little cup, put some sachet of salt in there with some water. It wasn't very sterile, but the salt kind of sterilises it, and I stored them in there overnight, and it gets all the dirt off from during the day, and then I was able to put them back in the next morning, and it was fine. So I always now put salt in just for that reason, really. You never know when you're going to need it. So that's generally pretty much what I'd have in. I have lots of duplicates of all of this around the house, and in all my various rucksacks, in my go bag, in my get home bag, in my car. And to be honest, most of the kind of emergencies I've had have resulted in me only needing antiseptic cream and some plasters. Maybe I don't think I've ever had to really use a bandage. Maybe once. I had a deep cut on my finger when I sliced it with a plumbing knife accidentally, just by reaching into a bag. Most stupid injury, but I needed to stop the bleeding so I could get down to our local A&E. So that's really all I've used is a series of plasters, adhesive wounds, antiseptic cream, and then very rarely the rest of it. But it's all good to have. It's all personalised to me, and I know that I'm covered for most eventualities and have a med kit to cover myself. So next we're going to talk about some more long-term situations when perhaps the medical help isn't immediately available. Now, why would that be? Well, just to give you an example, for instance, we live in a town where we don't actually have an A&E, we don't have a major hospital. The nearest one's about 15 miles or so away from us. But we have an urgent treatment centre. Now, my wife cut her finger the other week, chopping up a salad for our chickens, and just a cabbage salad, and she used one of the knives that I'd recently sharpened. I'm always sharpening it, and she's always cutting themselves on them. If you ever want to know how to really sharpen a knife, I would recommend the Maximus Iron Thumper channel. He's got a couple of videos on there where he's really good at sharpening knives, and of course now I've watched that, I just sharpen everything. If it moves, I'll sharpen it. And unfortunately it resulted in my wife cutting her finger, and she cut the tip of her finger with it, and it was really quite deep. It wasn't down to the bone, but there was a lot of blood and a lot of flesh loose flapping around, and she couldn't stop it bleeding. Anyway, I was out and about on the road. She phoned me up, said, I'm down at our urgent treatment centre, which is like our A&E, and they triaged her. Anyway, she'd gone down there with, she hadn't put plaster on or anything. She couldn't get anything on there because it was bleeding so much. And it's not going to be life-threatening because it'll eventually stop bleeding. But she had a piece of kitchen towel, paper towel, round her finger, and she was holding that on there, putting pressure on it to try and stop the bleeding. So I immediately dropped what I was doing, and I went straight round there and grabbed a few bits out of my medical bag in my car, and some steri strips, plasters, and a bandage just in case, because I wasn't sure what we were dealing with. Went in there. She's still sitting after she's been triaged. They looked at it and saw all the blood everywhere, but they didn't bother, giving her a temporary patch up or anything like that at all. She was sitting in the waiting room with about 15 other people with all this just blood-soaked kitchen towel. So, although we've got a functioning NHS, and that was our kind of A&E department, urgent treatment centre, you're going to get people there with more serious injuries, and you're going to have to wait. And they're not going to patch you up in the meantime. So, if she was bleeding to death, I would like to think that she would have been dealt with. Although, we had that awful news the other day where someone was found dead under a coat in an A&E department. It's just these things happen, right? So you've got to take responsibility for your own immediate med care. So I went in there, we cleaned it up. I got some steri strips on it. We got a plaster on it. Took the blood-soaked kitchen towel off her, and then she was ready to go. And then, that stopped the bleeding, and it was patched up temporarily. And then all they did when they got it in there, they just flushed it out properly, cleaned it, and put the same kind of thing on. They put a couple of steri strips on, and then one of these little finger bandages that goes over the top, and then put some micropore tape round to hold that on. So it wasn't much more. I haven't got any of those finger bandages. Otherwise, we probably could have dealt with it at home. They wouldn't stitch it because it's right in a place where you just can't stitch. Even though I threatened to use our staple stitcher, which I'll show you in a minute, but she was having none of it. But anyway, all I'm saying is we've got a functioning NHS, and a lot of money goes into it and everything else, and it's a free service to us in the UK. But you're not always going to get seen straight away, even if you go to an A&E. Now, longer term, there may be times where either you're a long way away from any kind of medical help, and the only way they're going to get to you is by either helicopter, or you're going to have to sort yourself out until you can get back from wherever you are. Now, really, the only time you're going to be in that situation is by probably sailing, because in the UK, we're such a small country and so jam-packed, it's unlikely that you're going to be in some remote region. You're not going to be in a remote desert, like the Sahara or the middle of the jungle. There's none of that in the UK. You're only going to be a few miles, really, or maybe 10, 20 miles from anywhere, but more than that, you'll end up stumbling across an A&E somewhere. However, Long term, there could be situations where we don't have availability of your local A&E, and that could be as a result of a major incident. And this happens quite a lot. If there's a major incident, like a major RTA, road traffic accident, or even a terrorist attack, that local hospital is going to have a massive influx of people, a big fire, something like that, where a lot of people are injured. And if you are injuring yourself at the same time doing some DIY at home and you need to go to the A&E, you're not going to get seen. They're going to prioritise all the people that are involved in this major incident. So there you're going to need maybe something at home that is going to patch you up for slightly more longer term, just in case you can't get seen on that day. Another situation which we've had recently is cyber attacks on hospitals, where they've had to redirect people off to the nearest hospital, and the nearest hospital from your local one might be 10, 20, 30 miles away or more. That's something that seems to be happening more and more. These cyber attacks, they keep attacking airports and hospitals and that kind of infrastructure. So that's something we need to be, from a prepping point of view, that's something we need to be prepared for as well. As far as what some channels might suggest is that your hospital's about to get nuked and you're going to have a complete societal collapse tomorrow. In my opinion, and it is just my opinion, but that's not going to happen. Not right now, anyway. And if it does, you've got more to worry about, to be honest, than cutting yourself, even with a serious cut. Now, I've also mentioned this before. A lot of my medical training or medical knowledge comes from these two books that you see here. I've talked about these before. I'll put links in the description. The Survival Medical Handbook talks about when help is never going to come. So what they talk about is when you are the buck stops with you. So in your town or village or whatever, we're talking about an absolute countrywide collapse of society where there is no NHS, there is no doctors around, there's no hospitals, absolutely nothing. And the list of medical equipment in there that they talk about that you would actually need to cover yourself in that eventuality, it would cost you thousands and thousands. I've got quite an extensive medical kit. I've got 3 large rucksacks with duplicates of all of this in, and some long-term stuff. We've also got a couple of boxes in the kitchen and some other tucked away as well. With a lot of this equipment in, just in case of a really long-term disruption of medical services. But you're talking about some serious stuff going to have to happen for that to occur. So I'm just going to run through what you might want to have in kind of more long-term meds, and for more serious injuries, and for also when you can't get medical help immediately. I'm talking maybe a couple of days or something like that. The one thing I did forget was a really good pair of tweezers. Sometimes you get these plastic rubbishy things that come with the first aid packs. I'd replace them with a good set of hard grip metal tweezers. They're kind of essential, really, especially for splinters. So more long term, what I've got supplies of is so simple things. Let's go with these. So we've got some TCP, which can be diluted down. Really handy for overall hygiene as well as flushing out wounds and stopping infections. We've got some Dettol soap. Does pretty much the same thing. Good for overall hygiene. And again, all this is not in any particular order. Cough mixture, I've got a variety of different types, chesty coughs, tickly coughs, all of that. It's always handy, and especially when we come into the winter period, when your coughs occur and you sort of think, I forgot to stock up, and you go to the shop and it's all sold out. So it's always handy to have some of this just stashed. Verruca and wart treatment, and again, that's kind of long term. You can obviously go to a doctor or a chiropodist who can treat these sort of things, get them removed. You can also buy these freeze spray things, which are quite good, which I've used in the past, where you spray onto it's like a spatula with a treatment sponge on the end of it, and you apply that to the verruca, and it's pretty good for that. But again, something you can look up and add to your med kit. This thing I picked up for loose cap and lost filling repair. So if you can't get into a dentist, you need to patch up a filling or something that's causing you pain. That plus with that coupled with the Bonjela that I said about earlier will hopefully relieve that until we can get some dental treatment. The reason I got that is, funny enough, I during the lockdown, I was on my boat and I fell off my boat and I fell into the river and landed my face on the pontoon, and I chipped half of one of my teeth off. You can't see it now because I've had it repaired, but when I mean, there was blood everywhere, but I ended up with this jagged half a tooth. It looked dreadful. And when I phoned up and tried to get treatment, because I hadn't been to an NHS dentist for a little while, I wasn't on any list. So I said, can I join as an NHS? And they said, we absolutely cannot treat you because of the risk of infection, you know what I'm talking about. And so we're not taking anybody in unless it's an absolute life-threatening emergency. So I said, well, what am I going to do with this in the meantime? They said, well, you'll have to wait until the risk has been lowered. I said, well, what if I pay for treatment? And they literally turned around and said, yeah, sure, when can you come in? So, I paid and I went in and they sat me down, no problem at all, and did this treatment. And, before that, they were telling me, oh, no, to treat any patient now, because of the risk to our dentists, we have to wear literally full hazmat suits, and we can't be paying for all of that. Well, after I told them I'd pay for it, and it cost me probably 300-400 quid, I went along there. They weren't in hazmat suits at all. In fact, the guy had a plastic mask on over his, attached to his head. Didn't have a surgical mask on underneath that, and when he was drilling my tooth, it was spraying all over him and everyone. So very strange, very strange. But yeah, that's why we got that, because I thought, I don't want to be in a situation where that probably wouldn't repair what I needed doing at the time. But for any fillings, if you can't get dental treatment, it's just another way of relieving the pain. So I've already talked about inhalers. Now, how I got this, rather than sitting down with my doctor and explaining the situation, I wanted to get a bit of a stockpile. I went on to Superdrug online pharmacy, where I just talked it all through there online with one of their online doctors, and they approved it, and then I got that sent out. It cost me slightly more than a prescription, so it's just another option. If you can't get to a doctor, or if it's inconvenient, or you just don't want to, then they're really good. They supply those kind of things. They do supply some other stuff as well. Nothing too complicated, but they're very, very helpful. The other couple of things I've got for long term, I've got some hydrocortisone cream. I probably should have gone in earlier. And the other thing I forgot earlier was a thermometer. So this one is battery operated. I'd recommend maybe for long term having a normal glass mercury thermometer if you can still get hold of those. If not, have some spare batteries for one of these. Always handy, so if someone's running a temperature. I also bought one of these. This is a skin stapler for serious wounds. I don't ever expect to use this, but if I was going to use it, it would be when there are no A&Es left, or there is no hospitals left, or I can't get to a hospital, or no one can get me to a hospital. It'd have to be a pretty dire situation. There are some instructions in there, and there's comprehensive instructions on how to use that in this medical book as well. So I'm confident that I'd be able to use it. And it also comes with a staple remover as well, so you can get them back out afterwards. Another thing that I would recommend, which I haven't got yet, is a suture kit. Now, sutures are very, very hard to get hold of, especially the real sterile ones. What I plan to do is get a suture training kit, which comes with like a slab of synthetic skin material that you can then practice on, and it comes with the sutures and the cordage as well, and the instructions on how to use it. So that's my next plan, to have that for long term, and then I would have to sterilise them as I go, because I don't think they come in sterile packs. Sterile ones, I think, if you can get hold of them, are really, really expensive. And we also have some morphine solution, which I'm not going to tell you where I got it or how I got it, but it was basically for long-term care of a family member, and we happened to have some left, and waste not, want not. So again, that would be used only if I am the go-to doctor in the town or village, and when there is absolutely no help ever coming. So it's an absolute total dire emergency. Hopefully I'll never ever need to use it. And then lastly, I was going to talk about antibiotics. A lot of Prepper channel, certainly in America, talk about getting hold of antibiotics, and they talk about you can get fish antibiotics. Now in the UK, I've looked into this, and because the fish antibiotics are, you can get amoxicillin, penicillin, which is exactly the same stuff that you can give to fish, because you're not going to be able to get it normally. You're not going to be able to go down to your doctor and go, he'll ask you, what do you need amoxicillin for? Well, I'm a prepper. That doesn't constitute a good reason, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't tried it, but I don't think that's going to work. I think you need to have a condition. They're very, very careful on when they give out antibiotics. So buying them, you can't buy them over the counter. You need a prescription for them. When I say they talk about fish antibiotics, which all you'd have to do is just scale it up to a human dose. It's exactly the same drug. I've looked in the UK, very, very hard to get hold of. I don't think you can import it. You could probably get into trouble if you imported it from the States. I think in America you can buy these sort of things literally over the counter. Much easier. Over here, absolutely not. What I did come across was a site called Anytime Doctor. I'll let you look into it on your own. I'm not going to leave any links because I haven't verified it all yet. But you can do a consultation, and for the budding sailors among you, if you were to go on a long sailing trip and you were to be miles from anywhere, and you were to contract either an ear infection or a bowel infection or chest infection, and you needed antibiotics over a course of a few days, then there are sailing packs that you can get that have amoxicillin and penicillin and various other broad spectrum antibiotics. They do cost an arm and a leg, but would be very, very handy. Now, I checked the site out. I went on there, I got approved, and for £91 I can get a pack if I was to go on my sailing trip, in the middle of nowhere and be miles and miles from any sort of help. And in that pack comes quite a comprehensive amount of broad spectrum antibiotics and instructions as to how to use them. So, and again, there's a big list in this book sorry to keep harping on about it, but there's so much detail in there about exactly what antibiotics are used for what conditions. So again, I would be referring to that as well. So I haven't bought this pack. It's 91 quid, as I said, but I may well do that. And if I do, I'll do another video on that and show you what I get in the pack. But it looks all legit, looks bona fide. You just end up paying for it. Now, I don't know whether if I was to sit down with my GP and say, listen, I'm going on a long trip, I need this pack, or I need these antibiotics, whether I'd get them or not. Some people don't always feel comfortable sitting down asking favours like that of their doctors, whereas this online you can get approved. I'm lucky I'm not on any sort of prescription medications or anything like that, and you do have to back it up by giving your doctor's details and everything else. But I got approved, and as far as I'm concerned, I just need to add it to my cart and pay for it, and that will be sent out. And it's all UK based, so it's just an idea there as a way of possibly obtaining long-term antibiotics. And then the last thing I've got in my kit, I've got several of these, and that is a tourniquet. Now you can make a makeshift tourniquet using a bandage and a stick, or a bit of cutlery or something like that. But these things, they come from, I think they come from China. They're pretty cheaply made. They're made in made with plastic. But what they do is these are for major arterial bleeding. So if you've cut yourself and you've got bleeding from the femoral artery in your leg, and you can't stop the bleeding, no matter what pressure you put on it or what packing or wound dressing you put on it, if the bleeding won't stop, and it's really pumping the blood out, you're going to die within minutes. So I keep this with me. I have one in the car in case I am either involved in or come across a major road traffic accident, and I'm first on the scene. As I said, I'm not a trained first aider, so it's unlikely that I would probably get involved. I remember when I went on my last first aider work training course, so that qualified me as a first aider. It was a St John's ambulance guy that took the course, and he said to us all at the end, although you're qualified first aiders now, he said, what I'd recommend is if you come across someone who's literally on death's door, do not jump in because of the lawsuits that you would get potentially. It's really sad that, obviously learn how to do CPR for your family, learn how to apply a tourniquet for your family. or for yourself. You know, you can do these one-handed apparently, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second. But as far as trying to jump in and you know, save a member of the public in the UK, well, you know, I'd leave it up to the ambulance. On the subject of ambulances, just a quick story. My mum, when she was alive, she a few years ago now, she fell down the steps, down these concrete steps. She was doing some gardening and she went back into the house, fell down these steps and cut her shin. Split the whole thing open. She cut it on the steps. It was a really nasty cut. There was when she phoned me, I ran around there. She literally crawled back inside to phone me. And as I say, it was only a couple of years ago, about probably 4 or 5 years ago. And when I got there, I mean, all the innards, all the fat layers and the skin layers was all coming out of this cut. There was blood everywhere. It was a right absolute mess. So I had to patch her up quick. She's always had meds, living in the country. She's always had a med cupboard, and so we managed to patch her up. Now I phoned an ambulance, and they sent an ambulance round. Now he came in, he put some more dressings on and everything else, and said, "Well, you need to go to a hospital because you're going to need stitches." Now this was a full-blown big ambulance, and it was just him. And he said, "We can't take her to the hospital because I've come out alone. I need someone with me, otherwise I'm not allowed to take her." Now, common sense, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I told them what the problem was on the phone. I just thought it was utterly ridiculous. They waste sending a full-blown ambulance around. What are they going to do? You know, if they can't sew her up in the ambulance, which he wouldn't do, he said he would only do that at the hospital. So he wasn't really going to do anything. Turns up with this big ambulance and then drives away again. Luckily we had a car. You know, if we hadn't had a car, I probably would have had to get a taxi or something like that, or maybe phone another ambulance. It just seemed utterly ludicrous. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a functioning healthcare system in the UK, which is generally very good. But there's occasions like that when you just think, you know, thank goodness we had our own means of transport, our own ways of patching up my mum. I got her down to the hospital. She was in A&E for hours, and luckily, you know, we had some spare dressings and everything else to just keep it from bleeding. And then they got her in, they stitched her up. It's just a reminder that you really need a first aid kit of your own, at least a basic one. I would say a more advanced one. It doesn't take much, just to you know, duplicate it a few times and just put it away, just stash it. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how I've read to use a tourniquet. I've never had to use a tourniquet in my life. Hope I never do have to use one, especially on a family member or even myself, really. But apparently you can use them yourself, you can do them one-handed, so I thought, well, we'll try that. So what I've done is I've read the instructions and I'm going to show you how to use it. Now, this does not constitute medical advice. This is not an expert's demonstration of how to use it. I'm just going to show you how easy they potentially are to use. I'm also going to talk through some essentials that you need to know as well. So what you do is you unravel this thing, and you're going to end up with a loop like this and a Velcro strap, right? So assuming I've got a major cut on my wrist area, somewhere like that, what I'm going to need to do is tourniquet closer to my heart to stop the blood flowing out of here. Now, we can't stop the bleeding apparently. It's so badly cut. So I haven't used ketchup or anything to make this demonstration more realistic, but it's going to get messy otherwise. So you could put this above the cut, right? So you can put it above the cut but below the joint. You wouldn't want to put it on a joint because it's not going to do what it needs to do. So you could put it up here, but the recommendation is that you do go closer to your heart, closer to your torso to stop the bleeding. So you would go up here above the elbow if it was on there. If it was below the knee, you would put the tourniquet above the knee, not on the joint, but you would put it above the knee. So here we go. So obviously you'd elevate to try and stop the bleeding anyway. You'd bandage that up, put some pressure on it, and then you would get your tourniquet like this. You'd place your arm through it, and then you would tighten up this piece here, strap that up as best you can. I'm doing this one-handed. That just seals that on there like that. And then you've got this little wand on here. It's called something else, but anyway, this handle here is hard plastic, and then you just wind it up. So what you'll do is you'll again keep this elevated. You'll wind this round. I can already feel that pretty hard, and you just wind that round, and that tightens up this loop around your arm. So you would keep winding that until, I'm not going to go too far now, I see my veins bulging already, but you would keep doing that until that bleeding stops down here. Once that's stopped, my arm's already gone a bit tight, so I'm going to undo that. But that's what you do, is you wind that up until it's really quite tight, and it may really, really hurt. So the patient will be crying out loud. My arm's now going a bit numb. So then you would lock the in here. It locks into that section there, like that, and then you put that timestamp back over the top, and you would write using your marker pen the time that you put it on. And that's very important, because you absolutely should not have a tourniquet applied at full pressure for more than 2 hours. If it goes on for much more than that, you are going to permanently kill the blood supply and kill all the cells, anything below the tourniquet, and they'll have to be taken off. So because it will just go gangrene, and that's why tourniquets are, you've got to know what you're doing. And so I'm going to take that off because my arm went a bit numb there, but it's all good. Still move my hand, we're fine. It's just a bit achy, but it just shows how effective they are. And that would have, if I had bleeding from my wrist, say, on this major artery here, tourniquet up here, tighten that up, that would stop that bleeding, and then I could bandage it up, and then you put the time on there so that when you do get medical help, so this is assuming you're going to get medical help, hopefully within 2 hours. There are some schools of thought where you can release the tourniquet every now and again and then tighten it back up again. The only issue with that is that could flood your body, the area that you've blocked off with toxins, and can send the body into shock, and that's where you've got to be careful of. So that's why you want a medical expert, like a doctor, who really knows what they're doing, to then either take off the tourniquet and reapply it, or remove it altogether. So that's kind of how you do it, one-handed. It's the first time I've done that actually, but I've been reading up on it, and it's pretty straightforward. And again, you've got a really long strap there for your legs and everything else. Obviously, you would never put it around your neck. Shouldn't even have to say that. So look, I hope that was extensive enough. There's so much more that could be covered on a video like this, and I've gone way over time already. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and if you found this information useful, then obviously please subscribe and like, share the video. It's very hard to cover everything, but over the years I've managed to build up, as I said before in previous videos, I've managed to build up a fairly good supply of medical treatment and equipment, but also let me know if I've missed anything. I've probably missed some vital component. But in the meantime, so I really appreciate you watching, and stay prepared.